This is why John and I never really got along.
Hmm.
Is I didn't put up with the shit. Yeah, I'm not going to say exactly what happened, but I'll give you an idea. And then John decides to do a sexual act with him, saying, what if I do this? Right? This isn't illegal, right? And the guy who was on the ground, quickly his eyes went, as big as they could get. Like, what are you doing? And I said, John, knock it off, right? And I said I could disqualify you for being unsportsmanlike. Go ahead and do it. Let's see what happens. John had a hard time with Machida in the first round. And Machida gave him problems and hit him hard. And I'm going to say that it was fascinating to me to watch him absolutely change the course of that fight in the second round and how he did it. And he changed, several things that he was doing. His timing was getting just thrown off by Machida. And all of a sudden he switched a couple of things with his footwork and the way he entered, and he caught Machida with a shot that hurt him. And when you look at the choke, the choke was, I knew it was on super tight, and I didn't think he was going to get out of it. So it was a matter of trying to watch. Well, he's the problem with, his face was down and I'm looking at it and John is turning his eyes away from me. And then finally, you can see his arm, drop. And when his arm drops, I would always count, to make sure that they're out. I'm going to go 1001, 1002, boom, and I'll stop the fight. And, when I came up to grab, I'm trying to release John's arms to take the pressure off the choke, and he decides to actually really let go. And so I didn't have control of Machida at the time. And I thought, yeah, there was something that happened in the back before that fight that told me exactly what, the level of John's maturity was. And so it was kind of like the filler on the entire night. But, hey, he just dropped him out, and he can do that. But it was, if you're the champ, you don't have to do it.
Machida was definitely giving problems. The movement, and that's what Machida does. But for him to figure it out, it says a lot about him and his fight IQ and his abilities. Definitely,
it does.
Definitely. Like, one thing you can't take away from him, because steroids doesn't enhance this, is his fight IQ. He's an extremely smart fighter. Extremely smart fighter.
Yep.
The little adjustments he can make. He uses, obviously, his talent, every little bit of talent he has and his athleticism, he uses to the full extent. Yeah. And he does that because he's got a very high fight IQ. One of the best, if not the best I've ever seen. You can't knock him for that.
No.
But like I said, all the other stuff that he's brought it upon himself. So that's the thing, is the judgment people put on him is based on the things that he's done.
Well, the judgment that people put on him are things that he's done outside of the cage for the most part. That's the real thing.
Yeah, I mean, depends on,
It's outside of the cage. Look, even the PEDs are outside of the cage.
Yeah, that's where I was going with that. Yeah.
Remember Machado asked John, so what happened in the back? Question mark.
That'll stay between me. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Between you? Like
between you?
Like sandwiched them between your face? Or?
Yeah. There was an individual. I'll tell you right now. Yeah, I'm not going to say exactly what happened, but I'll give you an idea. As the referee, knowing that I've got the fights that I have, I go in the back and I talk to each and every fighter on their own. And I had worked with John before, and I'm pretty good friends with Greg Jackson, so we always would stand there or sit there and shoot the shit. But when I went into John's locker room, he's bouncing around, he's having a good time, and he said, I got a question for you. I said, yeah, what's your question? And he says, I need somebody. And there's an individual there, and that individual was a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and was working for the commission. And he says, is someone getting on the ground for me, right? And so this guy, being a ground guy and being someone that was, man, I'm in Jon Jones's locker room. This is great. And so he says, oh, I'll do it for you. He says, I know how to roll. And so he goes down. He says, just put me in guard, right? And then John decides to do a sexual act with him, saying, what if I do this, right? This isn't illegal, right? And the guy who was on the ground, quickly his eyes went, as big as they could get. Like, what are you doing? And I said, John, knock it off, right? And I helped the person up, and he goes, I'm just joking. And he goes, but really, what could you do? I said, I could disqualify you for being unsportsmanlike. Go ahead and do it. Let's see what happens. This is why John and I never really got along, is I didn't put up with his shit. And that's just the way it is. It's okay.
I could see if he did that like with a buddy of his, like goofing around
different.
in the back. It's different than some random commissioner in the back, a random fan, a random person who's working as an usher or something like that. You're like, yeah, get down here, and then you do it to some person you've never met before. It just
dude, and that's why Greg Jackson comes up to me and says, John, I'm sorry he did that. And I go, Greg, it ain't you. And I go, he's just a dipshit.
Yep. I mean, like I said, a lot of the choices that he's made throughout his life has directly affected, I think, how people perceive him.
Yeah.
And sadly, it's not in a good light. I think him going full heel is definitely probably one of the better things that he's done.
Oh, yeah.
He's played it very well. And I don't know if he's playing it. This might just be who he is. But like I said, I don't want to take away from his abilities to be in terms of fight IQ and his talents. That's definitely there. But like I said, for me, there will always be a question mark or an asterisk next to his name because of the steroids. Because I also look at it too. Once the picograms had been discovered, have you noticed that his fights became a lot closer after that? His fights with Santos, his fights with Anthony Smith, his fights with Dominic Reyes, all of his fights were closer after that. A lot closer.
Okay, so how close have his fights been now? Not very.
No, not very. No.
Yeah.
No, but John, are we gonna say like?
I think a lot of it is he got bored.
Yeah,
and it's understandable.
I'm on the bandwagon with you on that.
Yeah,
I
got bored, and that's understand. It's one of the things I talk about. With being the champ all the time is you don't have a target to shoot for. You're always the target, and that's tough. So that has a lot to do with it, in my opinion.
Yep, I couldn't agree more with that. But it just seemed like it happened to be around the same time.
Yeah,
and so that puts more doubt in a lot of people.
But when he had, and I'm going to use your man again, Cormier, when he had fights that interested him,
yeah,
he performed. And look at it's. And I'll say this: I thought that I was the referee for his Dan Cormier, Jon Jones #2 fight, and I thought Dan was doing everything he could to be in that fight and to give John trouble. He was working hard, but he was being effective with what he was trying to do. He just made a mistake, but it was a mistake that John set him up on. And it happens. It's just, it happens. But I look at that fight, and that fight shows me that's how, if John gets up for a fight, yeah, he's really good.